The lights of Hollywood are bright, but behind those lights are shadows that can swallow even the strongest hearts. Keanu Reeves knew this better than most. To the world, he was a star, a man whose face was on posters, whose name filled theaters, whose performances won applause. But inside he carried scars that no award could heal. Fame tried to take him apart, piece by piece, yet there was one quiet habit that saved him, one simple choice that allowed him to survive when everything else seemed ready to break him. The story begins not with the glamour of red carpets but with silence. Late at night, Keanu often sat alone, the city lights outside his window glowing like distant stars. He asked himself questions no one around him could answer. What is the meaning of success if the people you love are gone? What is the purpose of fame if your heart is still heavy? Fame had given him money, attention, and a place in history. But it had also taken things away. It stole his privacy, it magnified his pain, and it brought him face to face with loneliness, even in rooms filled with hundreds of people. Fans cheered, cameras flashed, voices called his name, but inside, there were days when he felt like a ghost watching his own life from the outside. He thought back to the tragedies that shaped him. The father who left when he was a boy, the sister whose battle with illness tore through his heart, the daughter he never got to raise, the woman he loved taken too soon. Each loss was like a stone dropped into a river, the ripples reaching through every corner of his life. And yet through it all, Keanu never let bitterness take control. His quiet habit was simple. He chose humility. He chose kindness. He chose stillness. While other stars chased noise, he chased peace. While others demanded more, he gave more away. He would ride the subway, eat in diners, talk to strangers as if they were old friends. He would sit quietly in bookstores, read poetry, sip tea, and let the words remind him of what really mattered. But Hollywood was not gentle. It pushed him to be louder, shinier, more visible. People told him to use his fame, to build his brand, to demand attention. Keanu resisted. His heart told him that what saves a soul is not how many eyes are on you, but how you treat the people right in front of you. And it was this habit, this practice of humility and stillness, that became his shield against the weight of fame. Every time the spotlight grew too bright, he stepped into the shadows. Every time the noise grew too loud, he found silence. Every time life threatened to break him, he leaned on kindness. Still, his journey was not easy. There were nights when grief pressed so hard he could hardly breathe. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. But his choice to live simply, to honor others, to keep his spirit soft, that choice became his survival. This is the truth about Keanu Reeves that few ever see. Not the actor, not the action hero, but the man who found a way to live with grief without letting it destroy him. The man who carried respect for every person, from the biggest producer to the quiet janitor. The man who taught by example that resilience is not about never falling, but about rising again with humility. And though this habit saved him, fame was not done testing him. It would push harder. It would tempt him. It would try once again to take from him what he valued most. The real battle was still ahead. The world saw Keanu Reeves smiling on red carpets, shaking hands with fans, and standing under the glow of flashing cameras. But what they did not see was the cost of carrying fame on fragile shoulders. Every interview, every headline, every demand for his time pulled him further from the quiet spaces where he found peace. Hollywood wanted him to be larger than life, yet he only wanted to live simply. There were moments when the pressure felt unbearable. He would walk into a room filled with executives and hear them talk about numbers, profits, and power. They spoke of him not as a person but as a product. His name became a brand. His face became currency. He listened in silence, but inside he felt the loneliness pressing harder. Still, Keanu did not rebel with anger. Instead, he returned to his quiet habit. After long days of filming, he would walk the streets alone at night, sometimes with no destination. He would stop at a small cafe, sit by the window with a cup of coffee, and simply watch people live their ordinary lives. He envied them at times. The parents holding their children's hands, the couples laughing, the friends talking without cameras nearby. One night, while sitting in a quiet corner of a diner, a stranger recognized him. She was hesitant, almost afraid to disturb him, but when she approached, she did not ask for a photo or an autograph. Instead, she whispered, "Your movies helped me through my brother's death." Her eyes filled with tears. Keanu reached out gently, holding her hand for a moment. He did not say much, but his silence was full of understanding. That was when he realized the quiet habit he had chosen, this life of humility and stillness, was not only saving him. It was saving others too. His kindness, his presence, his refusal to be consumed by pride gave hope to people who carried their own grief. But Hollywood did not slow down. It wanted more from him. During one film shoot, he was asked to promote a scene that glorified violence in a way he felt was empty, soulless. When he refused, the producers grew frustrated. They told him he risked his career, that he should think about what he owed the industry. Keanu walked away from the meeting with calm steps, but inside he wrestled with doubt. Was he strong enough to keep resisting? That night, he returned to his apartment and opened the notebook where he often wrote his thoughts. On one page, he scribbled a line, "Fame cannot own me if I remember who I am." It became his private promise. Still, challenges kept coming. Tabloids printed lies about him, stories twisted to sell papers. Strangers judged him without knowing his truth. Some even mocked his quiet life, calling him distant, calling him broken. But through all of it, he held on to the one thing that fame could not destroy, his habit of stillness, kindness, and humility. What he did not know was that soon, a moment was coming that would test this habit more than ever before. It would not be about money or roles or gossip. It would be about a choice that would define his soul forever. The weeks that followed were heavy. Keanu moved from one project to another, his face calm, his words few, but inside he felt the weight of everything closing in. It was not just the pressure of Hollywood. It was the echo of his past, the memories that never fully left him. Sometimes, in the middle of a crowded set, he would suddenly feel as if he were standing alone in an empty room, his grief pressing against him like a shadow. Then came the call that shook him. A close friend from his earliest days in Hollywood reached out after years of silence. She told him she had been struggling, that life had pushed her into darkness, and that she needed help. Keanu listened quietly, his heart tightening as her voice trembled on the other end of the line. He knew what it felt like to stand on the edge of despair, and he could not ignore her. He left everything behind for a few days and went to see her. When she opened the door, her face told the whole story. Tired eyes, a smile that tried to hide the pain, the same kind of loneliness he had carried himself. They sat for hours, not talking much at first. Sometimes silence says more than words. Then slowly she began to open her heart, speaking of loss, of betrayal, of dreams that had crumbled. Keanu did not try to fix her pain with advice or speeches. Instead, he shared pieces of his own truth. He told her about the nights he had sat alone with grief, about the mornings when hope felt too far away. He admitted his fears, his doubts, the emptiness he had battled. His honesty was not weakness. It was a gift. It told her she was not alone. Over the next days, he stayed close, walking with her in the mornings, sharing meals, reminding her of the small joys that still existed. And slowly, he saw her eyes begin to shine again. It was then that he realized the quiet habit he had built, the choice of humility, stillness, and kindness, was more than a shield for himself. It was a bridge he could use to reach others trapped in their pain. But Hollywood did not pause for long. Soon, his team called, demanding that he return to finish a contract. The studio threatened to sue. The producers grew restless. Everyone told him he was making a mistake by stepping away. Keanu faced a choice: protect his career or protect his friend. The decision was not easy. He had fought so hard to keep his place in an industry that could erase people overnight. Yet when he looked at his friend, he knew the answer. Some things were bigger than money, bigger than fame, bigger than contracts. He called the studio and told them the truth. He would not return until his friend was strong enough to stand on her own again. The silence on the other end of the phone was heavy, followed by angry voices, threats, and warnings. But Keanu did not raise his tone. He simply repeated, I'm not leaving until she is okay. That night he sat by the window in her apartment watching the city lights, feeling the weight of what he had just risked. He might lose roles, he might lose money, he might even lose his place in Hollywood. But he had kept something far more important: his soul. The news spread faster than Keanu expected. Whispers began in Hollywood circles, and soon, magazines and blogs turned them into headlines. Keanu walks away from contract. Reeves risks career for personal reasons. Is this the end of his star power? The world that once cheered for him now questioned his choices. Producers called his phone nonstop. Some were angry, accusing him of being unprofessional. Others tried to lure him back with bigger offers, but Keanu stayed firm. He had chosen to stand beside his friend, and no promise of fame could pull him away. Still, the pressure weighed heavy. Hollywood is not kind to those who say no. For the first time in years, he felt the full force of the industry turn against him. Projects were delayed, some canceled. Interviews he had agreed to suddenly disappeared from schedules. Whispers behind closed doors painted him as difficult, unreliable. It was the price of choosing compassion over contracts. Yet, in the silence that followed, something remarkable happened. Fans began to notice. While Hollywood judged him, ordinary people saw the truth. Stories of his kindness spread, how he gave up his seat on crowded buses, how he shared meals with crew members, how he stopped to listen to strangers in need. They saw a man who valued humanity over wealth. The very thing that threatened to destroy him began to rebuild his image in ways he never planned. But Keanu himself did not focus on the noise. His habit remained the same. He woke early, walked the streets, found peace in small bookstores, and cared for the friend who was slowly finding her way back from despair. In those days, he discovered something deeper. Fame could vanish overnight, but the impact of kindness could last forever. Still, the backlash hurt. Late at night, when the city was quiet, doubts crept into his mind. Had he done the right thing? Would his career survive? Would the world forgive him for not playing by Hollywood's rules? He remembered the threats, the promises of being blacklisted. He could feel the shadow of losing everything he had worked for. Yet every time those fears rose, he returned to the habit that had saved him before: humility, stillness, kindness. He reminded himself that his worth was not measured in box office numbers, but in the lives he touched. Then, just when it seemed his career might truly collapse, something unexpected happened. A director he deeply respected reached out. This director had heard the rumors, seen the headlines, and instead of turning away, he said, "I want to work with you because of who you are, not despite it." Those words felt like a spark in the darkness. For the first time in months, Keanu realized that his choices had not closed every door. Some doors, the right ones, had opened instead. But fame is never quiet for long. As he prepared for this new opportunity, another challenge rose, one that would test not just his career, but his heart. A painful memory from his past returned, pulling him into a storm he thought he had already survived. The past has a way of returning when you least expect it. For Keanu, it came in the form of an old journal, sent to him by a family friend who had kept it safe for years. It belonged to his late sister, the one whose illness had taken her too soon. The pages were fragile, the handwriting delicate, but every word carried a weight that struck his heart. He sat by the window one evening, the journal open across his lap. As he read, memories of her laughter, her courage, and her quiet strength filled the room. But there were also words he had never heard from her before. She wrote about how she worried for him, how she feared he would lose himself in pain after she was gone. She asked him not to let grief turn him into stone. "Promise me," she wrote, "that you will keep living. Promise me you will choose love, even when it hurts." Tears slid down his face as he read. It was as if her voice had traveled through time, reaching him just when he needed it most. He thought of the choices he had made, The roles he had turned down, the fame he had walked away from, the kindness he had chosen over pride. In that moment, he realized he had already been keeping her promise without even knowing it. But the journal carried another message, one that unsettled him. She wrote of a secret she had wanted to tell him, but never had the chance. It was about their father, the man who had left them behind. She hinted that he had tried, in his own broken way, to make amends before his life fell apart. Keanu closed the journal slowly, his chest heavy. Forgiveness was never easy, and now the chance to speak to his father was gone. All he had were these words, and the question of whether he could let go of the anger he had carried since childhood. As the days passed, Keanu felt a storm building inside. The world saw him as calm, grounded, gentle, but privately, he wrestled with this old wound. He walked the city at night, searching for clarity. Every step echoed with the question, can a man forgive someone who never came back? Meanwhile, Hollywood was still watching. The backlash from his recent choices had not fully faded, but whispers of his resilience were spreading. People admired the way he lived simply, how he valued kindness over fame. Yet none of that mattered to him as much as the battle inside. One evening he returned to the small bookstore that had become his refuge. The owner, who had quietly witnessed his struggles, handed him a book of poetry. Sometimes, she said softly, the hardest forgiveness is the one that sets us free. Keanu nodded, though his heart was still unsure. He spent the night reading, the journal beside him, the words of his sister and the poems blending together in his mind. And slowly, he began to understand. Forgiveness was not about excusing the past. It was about releasing himself from its grip. His sister had asked him to live, to love, to keep his heart soft. Perhaps forgiving his father was the final step to honor her wish. By dawn, he felt lighter. Not healed completely, but ready to take another step forward. Yet as he closed the journal and placed it carefully on his shelf, a call came in. One that would change everything. A global opportunity. A project unlike any he had done before, but one that would demand more of him than ever. The call was from a director known across the world. A man who wanted to create a film not about explosions or glamour, but about resilience, grief, and the quiet strength of the human heart. He told Keanu, "This is not just a movie. This is a message. I want you to be the one to carry it." Keanu hesitated at first. The wounds of his past were still tender, and the thought of exposing his soul on such a public stage filled him with doubt. But then he remembered his sister's journal, her words asking him to live, to keep giving love, even when it hurt. He remembered Jennifer's letter, urging him not to let her absence steal his life. He remembered every stranger he had met who told him that his quiet presence gave them strength, and he realized this was not just another role. This was the moment to honor everything he had survived. The filming began. It was demanding, not physically but emotionally. He poured his real experiences into the character. Every scene of loss, every moment of hope, every silent tear reflected pieces of his own journey. The crew often grew quiet as they watched him act because they felt they were witnessing not performance but truth. When the film was released, it shook audiences everywhere. People cried in theaters, strangers held hands, families embraced. Critics wrote about its beauty. But more importantly, ordinary people wrote letters saying the story had helped them face their own grief, their own battles. But when the spotlight turned on him once more, Keanu did not speak of fame or success. Instead, he said words that would stay with millions. Pain is part of life, but so is kindness. So is hope. If you carry love with you, even through grief, then you are never truly lost. The world listened, and many could not hold back their tears. His journey had shown that fame may try to destroy you, loss may try to break you, but the habit of humility, of kindness, of stillness can save your soul. From that moment, his image was not just that of an actor. It was that of a man who turned suffering into compassion, who showed that resilience is not about denying pain but about walking through it with dignity. Late at night, away from the noise of cameras, Keanu still sat by his window with a cup of tea watching the city lights. The grief was still there. It always would be. But beside it lived peace, born from the choices he made, from the promises he kept, from the love he continued to give. He had survived fame, he had survived loss, and he had kept his soul intact.